Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. Thank you to CNC Technologies for sponsoring the special in-person interview that was recorded just prior to Heli Expo 2024. The expo was held in Anaheim, California. This recording took place in beautiful Beverly Hills, California, at the famous Lamar restaurant. CNC Technologies has assembled an impressive team of distinguished public safety aviators. During this two-part series, I got an opportunity to talk to their team in a panel-style conversation that covers a wide variety of important topics pertaining to public safety aviation. CNC Technology is a company renowned for its deep relationships with major equipment vendors, aircraft OEMs, and completion and integration facilities worldwide. These connections enable CNC to develop customized solutions tailored to each client's unique mission profiles. They excel in creating long-range HD video and data transmission networks, encrypted mobile communications, tools for real-time surveillance, and robust systems designed for continuous operation in challenging environments. CNC Technologies brings decades of experience in deploying local, national, and global communication networks, providing custom aerial surveillance, data transmission, and counterterrorism solutions, with extensive expertise in supporting Urban Area Security Initiative UASI project funded by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. CNC delivers tailored mission suite solutions for the world's most demanding operators, backed by unparalleled 24/7 service and support. Join us as we explore the cutting-edge world of CNC Technologies and their commitment to delivering your mission. Thank you to our sponsors, Metro Aviation, Robinson Helicopters, and Wysong Enterprises.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
I want to kind of change gears a little bit and talk about technology. We talked about how important it is for folks to see what we're doing. We talked about how using downlink technology can help folks see how important it is we're doing and look at the return on investment. And obviously downlink is your guys' wheelhouse. You guys are providing that real-time intelligence, actionable intelligence that folks on the ground can use to change the outcome of a situation for the positive. So on technology, I'll read a question to you guys. And it's interesting when it comes to technology, I feel like whether it's the recent upgrades in technology as it pertains to avionics or mission equipment, all of these recent upgrades in technology have improved our ability, effectiveness in so many ways. It's been awesome. I guess what's the most recent technological advancement that's made law enforcement units in aviation more effective?
So for sure on our side of the house, we see it all the time. I think it's going to be two players in the game. You have Flair and L3 and you have Churchill and Aero Computer. And now you have the big player in the game, which is trying to come up as Tracker, making that full mission program of a mapping system, a light, and a camera. No, we have not. Have we ever seen one vendor have all three of those products rolled in? We have not, right?
No.
So I would have to go with that one for the short answer.
Okay.
In my point of view, yeah. So from my point of view as the trainer, I have to stay on top of it. I have to stay ahead of it because tomorrow your agency is going to have that, and you're going to call me trying to figure it out that day. That's not right. So that's where I would go with that for a short answer.
So I think back to my early time as a TFO and remember using the moving map. The moving map at the time was independent of the camera system, but it was really cool technology. I remember taking people on flights back, look what it can do. It can look at where we are and it'll track us. And now I'm like, holy cow, that was nothing special.
That's a broken one now.
Yeah. So, as a TFO, you're like switching between the camera screen and the map screen to try and tell units where the suspect is. And I remember the day that Churchill got put into our ship for a demo, and I felt like it was cheating. It increased, I think, the efficiency of what I was doing tenfold. You didn't have to switch back and forth from the screens and potentially lose somebody. You could tell the ground units exactly what address this person's at, what address is following them, what streets on either side of them without switching screens. So I felt like that was a huge game changer, and I agree with you. I think that is probably the biggest advancement in our industry, at least in my recent memory. That's huge. I love what they've done. The product integration side of that is really cool.
Yeah, we're in an interesting, sorry to interrupt. We're in an interesting position where we, once it's in there and then I'm out there training with them, for example, CHP, Larry's old department, came up and said, well, we on our Caravan, we put 2 monitors and we put them on top of each other. The feedback from them, it was fascinating. They said, well, why can't, if this computer system, Churchill, excuse me, is so powerful, can we have 2 instances running at the same time? So the bottom one has the overlay, but the top one is its own instance of a map. We talked to our tech guys and they were like, yeah, we think we can do that. So that now is being fed to the next customer. Say, hey, CHP kind of developed this. They asked us, we as a group with Shotover's help, of course it's their product, put this together. You guys might want to think of doing that. So instead of doing 2 monitors side by side, for example, or a single monitor split, but 2, one on top of each other, we're blown away by it. And when you see it in action, they put it in their Caravan, we go up and train with it. I'm just sitting behind them going, my God, I can't believe you guys thought of this.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the cool thing. It just doesn't die there. Now, because of our company, now we go, hey, you guys ever thought of this? Instead of doing them sideways? Maybe, I know it's a small technological thing, but talk about acting like you're in overwhelmingly tactical advantage and almost like you're cheating, like you said. It feels like that at times.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's just the feedback we get from them while we're working.
You guys have become kind of the clearinghouse when it comes to, how to lay out your console and the mission equipment that's inside the cockpit. You get in the ship and you think, okay, it's set up this way because that's how it came. But no, if you want to be an efficient program and you want to efficiently look, like if you want the pilot to be able to see what the TFO is looking at, you can't put a divider between the pilot console and the TFO console. Otherwise, a pilot won't be able to see. But if you didn't know that because you didn't have the experience, you might do it anyways. That's where coming to you guys, you've seen good, bad, and the ugly of all of that stuff. So I think working with you guys to say, hey, this idea came in from this agency and it's working really good. You might want to consider that. I think that's huge. Relying on our own ability and our own experience to develop this stuff and lay this stuff out, I think it goes back to what you brought up, doing what you've always done because that's what you've always done. Yeah.
Why just stick with this way when somebody else has thought of a better way?
Yeah.
It took some energy to get it to work, but now everyone's like, oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So
yeah, you guys, Clay Lacey talked about in training. He talks about the smorgasbord of training. He talks about how he goes to different agencies and he gets these different stories from different folks and he'll cling on to the good tidbits of things that he likes and he'll pass it on to the student in the class. And the student likes it, he can take it like a smorgasbord. He doesn't like it, he leaves it. It's the same kind of idea. You guys are hearing all these interesting technologies and ways of doing things efficiently and are able to pass it on to the customers as an option. So I love that. To see the wheels turning over.
yeah, look out.
They are. So I'm going to answer your question in the negative. So rather than talking about what the newest or best technology is, I'm going to talk about what is perceived as being a new technology that really isn't there yet. So a lot of units are talking about cellular-based downlink. And I understand the desire to have it because when and if it is done very well, the infrastructure is much, much less expensive. Because to put a downlink transmitter and antenna in an aircraft is 150 to 200 grand, depending upon the aircraft and the equipment. A receive site is about the same. And so depending upon the size of your jurisdiction and your fleet, it can be a very expensive project.
Don't say expensive. It's not expensive. It's costly. It is. We share back and forth. If you tell a customer it's expensive, it's costly. There's a dynamic to what we do, and when we do it, it's going to be an expense. It is a value. There's a value in what we do. It's a value that you're going to get from us when we end up doing it. And I'm not trying to cut you off, but
I am
cutting you off.
But the point that I'm making is that so many units perceive that several solutions that are in the marketplace are a direct replacement for microwave video downlink. And it's not that they may not become the solution. We think over time there will be a solution. We just don't know when. For agencies that have never had downlink that works because they haven't used either the right equipment or had the right people put it together, they might be a 70% solution. And I'm not beating up on any of the vendors because there's several vendors that are really trying to have the right answer when it comes to cell-based because agencies want it so badly. But like you said, if we're the clearinghouse for what works and what doesn't, which CNC has become regarded that way, we're still investigating which ones may be the right solution when the time comes. Because for some agencies, like big state agencies that only have a couple big cities, but there's other areas to cover, they may not want to put up 7 receive sites. They might put up 2 in their big cities and then have a cell-based solution that will work in most places. And that could come. So the reason I'm answering the question in the negative is because sometimes the industry, and I mean the airborne law enforcement industry, perceives that something is up and coming, and it's not quite ready for prime time. And again, I'm not beating up on the vendors. They're trying and they're coming up with some new solutions, but time has to tell us if these are working or not. So I know it wasn't the direction you were looking to go, but I wanted to address it because it's a big topic in our industry.
And if I might just add on to that is just this past week, AT&T it went down. And I know Austin was hit really hard. As well as Houston and other areas where there was no network. Even furthermore, when the race was in Austin this past summer, they shut down cellular during the race. You can't use your cell phone to video it while it's actually live. And others, I know in Long Beach when they do the Grand Prix down there as well through the streets, they shut down all the cellular networks. So there is a balance.
And during major disasters, I live in Florida. And so when a hurricane comes through, the first thing that goes down is cell-based. Yeah. And, even AT&T FirstNet, several sheriff's offices in Florida have that. It doesn't mean that, it's going to work for your solution at that time when it comes to downlink. So it's a technology that is advancing, but we don't think that it's quite ready for prime time yet.
Yeah.
We're still trying to figure out which one is the right one.
Yeah.
Or which ones are the right ones.
Well, I'd love your answer. I think unintentionally answered both parts of the question with one. I think the part of the question he talks about was the technological advancement it's making us more efficient is downlink. So downlink has unquestionably changed how people view the information we provide to them and the decisions that are made in the ground, ultimately making this operation more efficient with whether it's a natural disaster like you brought up or a tactical situation. It's changed the way people can make decisions and made us more efficient as a result of that. I heard an interesting, I dropped in Clay Lacey's class yesterday, and there's a TFO from Fontana that was talking about a vehicle pursuit. They had the suspect bailed into a wash, and he's following the suspect on the camera. Units are asking him to come off the suspect and guide them into the area so they can get to the suspect. He's like, no, I'm not coming off the suspect. What they were looking for was information on how to get to that person. They were downlinking. Somebody on the ground used the GPS coordinates that were displayed through the downlink to plot on a map and use that information then to guide folks in. So it's really cool to see these different solutions come up in different ways than I think were ever intended, but it's making, again, what we're doing, whether it's from an aviation standpoint or an overall tactical standpoint in the police department, more efficient. And that's what we're looking for. When it comes to innovations that are up and coming, I think this is the second part of the question that you were getting at. Is that one of the innovations you think that's up and coming that will continue to change the efficiency of what we're doing?
I think it will. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
And I'm not a tech guy. Our tech team, which is not part of this forum, they can say if they think it will either replace or supplement microwave. I can tell you for agencies, an example, and there's many, but Dallas PD, they had 2 Jet Rangers, no operational imagers. They were patrolling at 400 or 500 feet and really weren't doing a whole lot of good. They were able to secure some funding, and we were the prime contractor that both upgraded their cockpits, upgraded, moving map, searchlight, downlink, upgraded the receive sites. And they went from not really catching a whole lot of bad guys because of aviation to commanders, hollering on the phone if they can't see a downlink image. And when you can revolutionize how you do your job and how it affects all the cops on the street, now you've proven your worth, and then you get the budget you're trying to get. You're showing results. And there's some agencies, they want nothing to do with downlink because we might use it for a major incident. We're not going to be turning it on every day. Well, it's turning it on every day that's making you more useful for your agency. But if your agency doesn't have the context of even how to process the information that's coming in, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that they need it until they can see it. And so downlink, I think, still is the most revolutionary technology as far as how it can change how a unit is perceived. Time will tell if something other than microwave becomes a dominant technology, whether it's cell-based or otherwise.
Yeah. You bring up something interesting. I feel like a lot of agencies are starting to bring real-time crime centers online. Mm-hmm. And with those real-time crime centers, if they have an aviation component mixed in there and they have a downlink part of that, I think most of those agencies are asking their programs to, as soon as you launch, you're going to turn on your downlink. And that's becoming a valuable part of the service they're providing. So I think that's only going to become a bigger piece of the puzzle when it comes to real-time crime centers and how technology is kind of shaping law enforcement as we move forward. For you, and again, going back to your experience in Nebraska and the time you had, what's your opinion on some of this technology that's changing what we do?
Well, I tell you, it's interesting points because you put a sales guy on the spot, and you put a quality control guy on the spot. So about advancing technology. So, but in reality, I can share some of my views that we had with our IT folks and our really techie people from the State Patrol that wanted to take a look at doing this on the cellular base because they're trying to implement and they're trying to overlap with the in-car cameras on all the cellular based stuff. And so why not? It's easy, right? It's a low-hanging fruit type deal. And it's really not, because we know it's not there. We hosted Big Ten ESPN Game Day in Lincoln, Nebraska, and so of all the cellular structure that took place there and everything that was there for infrastructure for broadcasting, it was terrible, for the cellular site. We found out, and I speak present tense as we all have with our agencies because of how proud we are of them. We had the most success with the downlink, microwave downlink technology. I started off at the beginning, you jump from Infometrics back in the day before FLIR bought Infometrics. That's how long ago it is. And then, MX10 stuff, camera technology.
Is that like a 10 can?
That's like that's
pretty much. You can see white blobs.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I date myself with talking about these old technologies, but in reality, I touched on the previous question that we had. Other agencies, we weren't a nice to have, we were a need to have. And we were the rock stars when it came down to it. When we're calling out streets and we're calling out the minutia of small back street, when we're following a target, these FBI, DA, they couldn't figure it out. These guys are just unbelievable big brain people up in the airplanes. We like to think that we are, but the truth of it is that technology just made a great thing with the Churchill, the camera system, and getting that signal down to the people that needed to see it. So whether the incident be an ESPN, a Big Ten game day type deal, or it became to a serious disaster, I thought about to the riots that took place for George Floyd. Sister agency didn't have that technology at the time, and their chief was like, I don't know what this is, but we need it. And because the situational awareness and the reference that folks had from the street officers all the way up to the administration was unbelievable. And it was a total game changer. And we used that over and over and over by deploying aircraft to different locations, as we had in the past with Nebraska. And so with that technology that was out there, we ensured them that we could support it. But we had fixed sites in Lincoln and Omaha. We were fortunate to have 80% of the populace within 50 nautical miles. Can we support the western end of the state? Absolutely, with portable sites, and do what we need to do because of the wild range fires and the other things that take place out there with the disaster. But as far as the future goes, it's a tough one for me to forecast. I think some cell-based technology is going to continue to go, but I think we're just going to get better with what we have on the microwave side of the house, and it's going to grow stronger, and that is the standard right now. But a lot of people don't like me hearing that, but it's just from my perception. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And I've got to say, to Brian and his agency's credit, they were one of the few customers that, without CNC's involvement, were able to pull off the connection between the air, the ground, and their IT infrastructure. It's a hard thing to make work, but,
right.
But you guys were very sophisticated and you made it work. And some customers can do it. They have the right people in the right places, and they're able to get the results. Kudos to y'all, because you did it right. But I do remember during those riots you were talking about that. I think you were on the phone with me saying that in the EOC it had the State Patrol's logo.
Yes.
On the video.
I can assure you that I will just say it. I made sure our logo was up.
You bring up technology and all the advancements that it's brought. It's huge. And the one thing I think of is also the headaches that come with that. And I remember trying to integrate all these systems, trying to troubleshoot where the problems are coming from when you have problems was a difficult situation we found ourselves in for quite a while. And that's one of the things that I love about what you guys are doing at CNC is kind of bringing that full IT, I guess you want to call it, solution to agencies. You guys, again, going back to the experience you have, dealing with other agencies, dealing with the variety of problems that you experience. It was really nice to call when we signed up, we call and be like, hey, this is what we're having. You guys would take over instead of us spending 20 hours trying to troubleshoot a problem and get any aircraft back up. You guys could pretty quickly get on board, figure out what the issue was, and have it resolved. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you guys are doing that?
Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
So there's a couple ways that we do that. You know, it starts with a new customer. It starts with a call where we typically have someone who's like an aviation leader, maybe a command staff person, an IT person, director of maintenance, and then our sales and tech guys. And you know that it's all starting to work when on the Zoom call, everyone's eyes start to gloss over because one of our tech guys is going deep into a rabbit hole about IT stuff, talking about flux capacitors and all the stuff that most of us don't understand or want to understand. The IT folks connect with our tech staff and they realize these guys really know what they're doing. We don't just know the equipment on the aircraft, each piece of mission equipment and how to make it work, or the receive sites or the IT ground infrastructure. We know how all of it works. So I say we, our tech guys, because they really do. And once the customer realizes, hey, they're not just one piece of the puzzle, they're the ones who made the puzzle and they understand how to keep it working. But one way that our staff is able to continue to keep aircraft up, when we design an aircraft from scratch, we'll also put a router that's got cell antennas and SIM cards in it so we can dial into that machine, whether it's through a Wi-Fi network in the hangar or whether it's in the air. We've actually fixed, troubleshot and fixed problems in the air.
Oh.
During missions, whether it's in Texas, New York, several places. And that doesn't happen every time, and we don't usually have the requirements to do that. But when we design the systems, we do it so that we can troubleshoot and fix the problems more easily. And that's what you get because, Bell and Airbus and Hangar One and Metro and all the completion centers, they can do the work, but they don't do it in the context of the entire system that the agency's using when it comes to downlink and IT infrastructure. And that's where we really shine, is connecting all those dots.
Yeah, I feel like we've put this added burden and weight on our mechanics at the hangar. Not only do they have to know the systems, the mechanical systems, now they also have to know the avionics, all these components of the mission suite. That's a big ask, right? Because just the systems by themselves are difficult, complex, and hard to understand. And we've said, hey, now do this too, right? But you guys are, again, offering a solution for that, where hopefully we can be taking these mechanics instead of spending 10 or 20 hours trying to troubleshoot a problem and bring an aircraft back online. They can go back to doing the 100-hour, 600-hour inspection that they were doing in the first place when we interrupted them. Pilots like to break things, and we get a lot of credit for that. But at the end of the day, we need that aircraft up to do the mission that we need to do. So you guys are offering a solution for that, which I absolutely love, and saw firsthand the benefits.
And all the DOM has to do is scan the QR code, which enters that squawk, whatever it is, into our system. That Larry I refer to him as the pacemaker, because he keeps any issue that's going on, he is monitoring that issue through the organization and make sure that it's getting attention, it's being addressed. And so now the DOM can do a DOM job. The unit boss can do a unit boss job. Pilots can do a pilot job. It's created a situation where people will write a check for recurring support so they don't have to do that anymore. They can just fly their aircraft and keep them working.
Yeah, that's awesome. Shannon, back to you. I might need to repeat the question because we've gone down some rabbit holes. But what's your thoughts on innovative technology and how that's changing our industry?
To expand, just like the other gentleman did on the downlink, I think downlink is going to be the fourth dimension of police video cameras. I mean, years ago when I first started, you had dash cams, and now everyone's got body cams, but not every agency has the overhead to see everything that's going on. on the ground on a call before the 6 o'clock news puts it up there. And you brought up George Floyd and all the other issues that are happening. The problem is, like we talked about with cellular technology, is the commanders want a solution now that's easy. The administrators, and that's less costly, right? We want the cheapest thing we can get. We're cops, and we brought up earlier, what do cops? 2 things cops hate the most: change and things staying the same. So they're always struggling to try and to find ways to change things and to make it work. I agree with Mark that TRAC has got a good program going on right now. They're up and coming because they've got a full solution, at least for the being able to put everything together in that one context. I started in aviation when I used informatics. Before we had thermal cameras on the aircraft, I had a handheld searchlight. So I'm dating myself going back to what we had. And as you get new technology, your eyes like, holy mac, we've got a thermal camera in the aircraft now. This is awesome. And then you get a moving map, and then you get different generations of the moving map. So, I think that my opinion, like I tell my customers, is that the video downlinking, or robust, good video downlinking source, is what you're going to really want in the aircraft and on the ground infrastructure.
Yeah, it's insane, right? When you can take that imagery and that information and send it to the ground and think back to when that didn't exist, and what an advantage it gives the folks on the ground. It's mind blowing, really.
Yeah, 20 years ago when we put it in, people weren't using it, like you said, but now my former agency has the real-time crime center, and that we're hearing that more from agencies, and we can support that through CNC Live. We can support that getting piped directly into their real-time crime center, as well as having it at their laptops or their cell phones for the commanders to see wherever they are on the earth. If they have a cell connection or a video connection, they can see it wherever they are.
You brought up CNC Live, and again, going back to Clay's class yesterday, I heard a really interesting comment about an agency who was using their downlink technology as their following pursuit. This agency's chief was off duty. It happened to be on a beach somewhere. And that chief was notified this pursuit was ongoing. He used CNC Live to log in and follow the pursuit as it ended. Once the thing was terminated and completed, the air crew went back to the hangar, and they got a phone call. And this chief's like, "Hey, I just watched this. Good job." And again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with proving your worth. When these administrators are able to see that stuff, even on vacation on a sandy beach somewhere with a cocktail in hand, and they call you and congratulate you and thank you for the work you're doing. That doesn't happen outside of that technology. So pretty cool.
Right.
But going again back to California and the CHP, what's your opinion on what you saw and how that technology is kind of changing our efficiency?
So I remember when I started in aviation, I was trained with a Thomas guide. And so, the situational awareness that a TFO has now with all the technology in the aircraft, and technology always changes. Throughout the course of purchasing 11 helicopters, there was minor changes in each one, just because technology changes. And so as much as you try and standardize a fleet, unless you're buying all of them at the same time, which is a huge, proposition for any state government, spacing them out over years of acquisition, there's going to be minor technology changes in the airframes and the equipment as well. I think I'll put a different kind of a spin on this, and I think the technology inside the aircraft certainly makes the aircrew safer, because I'd be the first one to tell you, we were down at 300 feet shaking shingles using my eyes and binoculars, at the end of pursuits and different things like that, because it was just the way we did things. But now with the technology, we don't have to be that low. You can be up at 1,200 feet, 1,500 feet, and 3-mile orbits, and actually see everything that you were seeing when you were down low. And so it enhances that safety bubble, that safety margin. There's pros and cons to that as well. I can remember when we first picked up our new aircraft, when the pilot's learning all the the autopilot and the SAS and all these different functions inside the aircraft on the pilot side, and I'm playing with everything over on my side, the FLIR, the TRACA, and getting all the systems together on the left side of the aircraft. Who's outside flying the aircraft? And so there was a clear passover. Okay, I've got your scanner. Pilot would say, I'm inside for a minute. Technology's great, but it brings you kind of focused inside the aircraft when everything is happening outside the aircraft as well.
Yeah.
So there has to be that balance.
Yeah, I think initially going to air support, it was a hard balance to find of looking out the window and being out the window and being on the camera. And it seems like increasingly folks are on the camera more. as a TFO, and agencies are requesting that for good reason. The camera has become a vital part of the mission equipment. But I do like what you brought up. It is making the industry safer. You think about having an engine failure at 300 feet versus 1,500 feet. It gives the pilot a lot more time to make a decision on where you're going to go. Opens up your options dramatically.
More seconds to scream.
Yeah, it's changing a lot of things, and I love what that does. Eric, for you, I know you're a big advocate of technology. In fact, going to aviation, I think we were one of the early adopters of downlink in our region. It did wonders. I remember people saying that, like, holy cow, I thought it was a big deal, and it's almost commonplace now. If folks don't have it, they want it, or at least know about it. What's your thoughts on technology and how it's making our industry more efficient?
I think the downlink has been a huge leap forward in overall awareness, right? From the people that typically you'd have things happening and you'd have people that wanted information, administrators and supervisors, and it was all based on word of mouth. So they were on a phone to somebody, and they were constantly bugging the dispatchers to get more information from the air crews to try to ascertain what's going on. And with downlink, that all goes away because they literally just start watching it. And one thing that we didn't touch on, but I think I don't know if it was equally as important as downlink, is when we started integrating the radio in with the video. So about 4 years after we started the company, we started being able to integrate the video or the audio feeds in as well. The customer decides, hey, we want our primary channel to come across when we're downlinking, transmitting a video image. To me, it's the difference between watching an old black and white movie and watching something in color, or watching a sports event with the volume turned down. Suddenly, you turn up the volume and you hear the color commentary. For somebody who just turns on a video image, it may be, of just a neighborhood. And you're sitting there going, okay, what are we looking at? If you've looked at enough downlink images, you've seen really arbitrary stuff that's come on the video screen, and you're sitting there going, what are we looking at?
Yeah.
Well, suddenly you put audio to it, and it's somebody saying, it's a dispatcher saying, hey, we just got a call that there's possibly somebody in this backyard. And all of a sudden the camera pans over and is now looking. Well, now nobody has to guess anymore. You're hearing real time and seeing real time what's going on. So I think that audio development was just a huge enhancement for the video. And I think cell phone is out there. I think it was a great point to touch on. I think it's important to recognize that it's not that we push that technology away, but we're very much advocates for our customers. We're agnostic when it comes to equipment, which means that we're going to figure out what you need to best fulfill your mission profile. And that's what we're going to recommend. And we're not beholden to anybody, and we're not manufacturing anything. So we're going to get you the best equipment that we can possibly get you. If that is cellular, then we're going to be the first ones on your doorstep saying, hey, we need to get this thing up and going. When that time comes, we're going to be there championing that technology. So I think sometimes people get the impression that if we're not pushing it, it's because maybe there's some other interest behind it. And the only interest is making sure that our customers are getting the best possible technological solution they can access.
Yeah.
With that, I think VR is going to provide some amazing opportunities in the training realm. And I think there's probably some really significant stuff coming up in the lighting industry as well. And I mean, nobody's really even touched on the infrared technology. I mean, you talk about, infometrics and now these, MX10 technology, that technology in and of itself is mind blowing. There was a day when you could say, okay, I think there's an officer talking to a citizen. Now the guys go, hey, that's Crosby. And I don't know who he's talking to, but the guys on the infrared are identifying the officers because the quality is so crisp and clean. It's like looking at them in video.
Yeah.
And then as all of that stuff improves, that all is translated straight down to the ground. So the image, my argument was always when somebody said when I was working on the downlink project, and they would come to me because the grant funding series was coming up, and they'd say, you're going to need to tell us what you need. And I said, I need better cameras. how do you know that? And I said, because if you give me a better camera, I'll give you a better downlink image. All of, a lot of these technologies directly correlate into the other technologies. It's an exciting time always, because there's always things that are going to happen and move us forward in a really positive direction.
Yeah, I agree. I love competition in any industry. And I feel like what Shotover is doing in the camera industry is huge when it comes to the infrared camera system and even the color camera system. Having had a chance to demo the M2, seeing the different technology bits that have been upgraded and changed as compared to what we're used to. It was almost like when I used the Shotover Churchill system for the first time and saw the difference between the two. I'm like, holy cow. And I always go back to being able to capture a plate. And their system is designed to where when you're scanning through vehicles, it'll capture these plates and grab it for you, screen grab it, and you can read it. Because what would happen to me is I'd always either miswrite a number or a letter, or I'd misremember it, or a combination of the two, and now it's capturing that clean image. And that's just one small example of what they're doing. I love the innovation. And again, it translates into the other companies as well, right? Now these other companies are feeling the pressure and they're going to be forced to change and improve what they're doing. So I love all of that, but I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying as far as the camera systems and how that it kind of improves every part of the mission suite.
John, one technology that no one's mentioned that we've started to incorporate with some of our customers is a bidirectional link, where we can actually send data back up to the aircraft, and a particular piece of data that's very useful for our customers is where officers, deputies, troopers are located on the ground, because their radios have a GPS signal that goes back to communications, and that can be sent up to the aircraft and be viewed on the moving map system. So imagine as a TFO, when you no longer have to ask who is at what corner, but they know who is there. And so they can call them out, or they don't even have to discuss it because they know which officer, trooper, or deputy is in that spot. So it's, and there's, of course, we have the ability to send, CAD data and other things too, but the link between the ground and the air can go two ways through the microwave video downlink. And I think over time, that's going to make it easier for the TFO to do his or her job and have better situational awareness to be able to manage the scene.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And I think that's probably my second piece of technology that I'd like to see change fast. Talking about real-time crime centers and LPR technology. Talking to Matt Sluka from Illinois State Police, they're using LPR technology in a really cool way in aviation. The problem is sometimes you can't get that LPR information on your phone because you don't have cell service.
Right.
But if you have that bidirectional ability to get information through your system, it doesn't matter if you have cell service or not, right? You can get that information and employ that proactive approach to aerial law enforcement in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. So I think it changes us from being a kind of a reactive force to now being proactive. And again, it comes back to efficiency and return on investment, all these things that we're looking for to improve not just our own program within our agency, but our industry as a whole. And again, going back to just the CAD data, it's nice not to have to ask for the third time, what's he wearing? So I love the idea and the concept behind that. How widely available is that?
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned air medical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completions Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs, including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
I have no clue, but I can defer you to our tech team.
Okay.
But I envision the day when you have like a roam function, right? And when you're not working a call and the LPR trips for a stolen vehicle, it automatically slews your camera to the intersection that the vehicle just went through and gives you the stolen vehicle information. I mean, imagine that. You're flying around and all of a sudden you don't even have to wait for somebody to transmit it. The LPR goes out, you get a ding on your computer, in your helmet, camera slews over to wherever that was at.
Yeah, that stuff's absolutely amazing. Love the conversation as it pertains to technology. So I really want to, again, change gears and get to the career development side of things. Because, again, to credit CNC, you guys have done a really good job of developing and recruiting the best talent from the aviation industry, law enforcement aviation industry. And you guys have all figured out a way in your career to not just exceed in your career, but in post-retirement, find a job that's fulfilling, to take the experience that you guys have developed over the years and kind of lean into the generation behind us. And it kind of goes to what we're talking about, leaving it better than we found it. The next question that I'd like to ask kind of lends to career development. What I find is I feel like a lot of people, they go through their career and don't really consider what we're going to do when that retirement comes. We spend a lot of time and effort and energy into getting to that point. Most of us in public safety retire at a fairly young age. And then you get to that point and we're really young. You have all this expertise and energy left to kind of lean into the generation behind us. And what do you do with that? I don't think it's enough to just say, I'm going to go and be a pilot or a TFO and just that, and expect to go to the next part of your career and get hired by a company like CNC. So I want to ask you guys, from your perspectives, what did you guys do collectively to kind of separate yourselves from anybody else, whether that was intentional or not? I think it's important to kind of go through that. We'll start with you on this. What steps should somebody consider when they're looking at career development? Not for the folks that are looking to go to aviation, the folks that are at a point in their career where they're kind of thinking about the next step. Because you shouldn't wait until a year or 2 years before that next step when you start considering yourself, because at that point, I don't think you've given yourself enough time to really develop the traits and the things that set you apart from the other folks that you're competing against in retirement. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I would agree. For me personally, I used to have a running joke, but I'm not sure it was much of a joke, was that the state police was like the mafia. It was hard to get in and harder to get out. But I never really had an exit plan. I don't know about the other guys. We never really talked about it, so it's kind of a cool question for us all to debate here. I never had an exit plan. A lot of us will get hurt or sick and leave. In my case, the 25 years is the golden limit for us over in Mass. I went to 26 plus and then got out. I think it's your reputation. I think like getting into an aviation unit, your reputation on the road or the street, depending on your department, gets you in. Like, oh, he's a really good guy. He works hard. We like him. He's always pushing it. That gets you to an aviation unit. And I think all of us here, as you go down the line, I'm going to be interested to see the answer. For me, it's reputation. Yeah. How hard did you work? And what is your reputation within the industry?
Yeah, we're part of a small community.
Yeah, sure.
And if you have a bad reputation, if you don't do the job well that you're assigned to do, everyone's going to know about it. Yep. Not just in your agency. It's going to be every regional asset that knows about you, even nationwide, or in some cases international, depending on.
Yeah, and quite often you won't stay with the unit long if your reputation suffers. You do some stupid things up there, you're going to probably be removed. So,
right.
Yeah, it's the longevity coupled with the reputation would be my answer.
It's a great point as well, because I think that's our advice a lot of times when it comes to the initial selection process. People ask, what can I do to better myself? And there's quite a few things now that you can do to better yourself, but one of them is do the job that you are in now well, because it's important. If you're working the street, treat your beat with integrity. Make sure your partner is not, picking up your slack. Do the job you're doing now well, and I think that pertains to right. your time in aviation as well. The reputation that you develop will speak for itself when it comes to the next thing. So yep. I like that.
Agreed.
Well, for everyone at the table, I was the first one that left my government job to go into the private industry. Everyone here has more than 25 years experience, I think, or certainly more than 20. I'd been involved in aviation for 4 or 5 years, and our unit, which was a joint unit between the city and the county, had a 10-year anniversary. And so at this 10-year anniversary, we invited all the OEMs to come if they wanted. And our event was sponsored by American Eurocopter. And Larry Roberts, who was the vice president of sales for Eurocopter at the time, had started our unit when he was a city cop. And then he left the city, went to another agency, and then got hired at Airbus and went all the way up through the ranks to be the VP of sales. So I was the MC of our 10-year anniversary. And after the event, he's like, Ed, I really need a law enforcement guy. Would you be interested in taking the job? Because, you seem to kind of have this together. And I'll get to, I think, what you need to do to get there. But for me, it was completely accidental. I had no intent of leaving my job at the police department after 20 years. I figured I'd stay and do the drop. And, I knew I didn't want to be a bailiff when I retired, and go work for the county, which is what a lot of folks do. They retire and they go do a job that they're still qualified for, but that it's not really a plan. It's just something to do to maybe get vested in a second retirement. Instead, I took a risk because our retirement was 20 and out. You could leave the city, and the city police and firefighters. You could start collecting 50% of your salary at 20 years. And so I left, moved my family to Texas, and I started a sales job. And I had people who came to me within my agency and said, "What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? What happens if the plant burns down?" Or so, they came up with all these reasons why I should stay. I was glad that they felt like I should stay, because a lot of the people who worked for me liked, they're like, "There's so much more you can do here." I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. It was the best decision I made, but I did not plan to do it. But I did the things that people need to do to go to the next step, because my view was not just within my unit. So many of the folks at this table, they were involved within the airborne law enforcement industry beyond just their agency. They worked with other agencies. They became instructors. They taught outside. And when you're involved in the industry, that's how you make contacts. Mm-hmm. After I left the Gainesville Police Department and retired and then went over to then American Eurocopter, I would tell my folks back home, I said, look, there's life after law enforcement and you have to plan for it. And if you're a patrol guy or gal, or you're a detective, well, I've got a good friend of mine who was on the SWAT team with me. He now has his own training company, and he does, homicide schools, other things like that. All different kinds of things that are more criminal investigations related, but he found his niche, not only perfected it, but then turned it into his next career. And we're uniquely positioned as aviators to do the same thing. But you have to distinguish yourself within the industry that you work within. It's not just that I'm a pilot or a skilled TFO or whatever I am, because look, there are jobs, whether you're a pilot or not, you can get a very respected job at FLIR or Westcam or Tracker or whatever, selling imagers or moving map systems. There's a lot of places, but if you don't get yourself out into the industry 2 or 3 years before and get to know people, because you don't want to retire and then show up with a resume. No one wants to hire a guy or gal who used to be a TFO or who used to be a pilot. They want someone who is current and relevant, and you step right from one into the other. And it's exciting to me, having worked at CNC, because everybody who's sitting at this table, except for Eric, came on after I came on to CNC, and all came from a job. And I worked directly. I knew you for a long time.
Don't threaten me.
You were my customer. You were my customer. And I'm not claiming credit for bringing anybody on. That's not what I'm saying. But my point is, these people all did something to distinguish themselves, so they became attractive. And they weren't showing up at the door waving a resume in Alex and Ron's face. That's not what it was. They were qualified, and they were at the right place at the right time. So, I had a boss early on who said, timing in life is everything, and it's true. But it's not just timing in our case, it's being prepared. Mm-hmm. You have to be prepared and ready for what the next step is if you're going to move on, whether it's working for CNC or working for an imager company or working for an airframe OEM or whatever, fixed wing helicopter, it doesn't matter. I feel like I was just ready, but didn't realize that I was prepared to go, but I took the jump and I did it. But many of the guys at this table stayed much longer, and they were positioned to go.
You bring up some points that are really interesting, and it kind of piggybacks on what he just said as well. The first thing I'll touch on is you talked about not knowing you're going to go at 20 years. And I think we all plan for a 30-year career if you're in Southern California or California public safety. 30 years is the golden number. But you never know when that 30 years or if that 30 years is going to happen. In my case, I didn't know. My full plan was to go 30 years. I ended up medically retiring, and I went 18. If I had waited till year 28 to start preparing for retirement, I wouldn't have gotten there, right? I would have been put on the street, so to say, without a plan and without a purpose in a way to make myself competitive for a job in retirement. So I think don't wait till the last 2 years to make yourself competitive. And I think to what you're saying, be good at what you do now is important, because when you stand apart from the folks that you work with because your work ethic and the product that you produce, it speaks about you, and it teaches you things about yourself that you can apply in other situations, right? So I think thinking ahead of the game is really important. And again, going back to CNC's credit, you guys all have prepared yourself really well to be in this position and be in a position, again, to where you could feed back into the overall community as a whole.
One thing I'll bring up, in Shannon's case, I was a sales guy at Airbus, and I was very strongly courting Anne Arundel County and Howard County, trying to get them to switch from their Bell 407s to flying A-Stars. And I would go out and meet with them. And then when Shannon was in town for Bell training, I'd say, hey, come on over. Let me give you a tour of the company or give you a demo flight. Or one time he brought his wife and his daughter had an interest in aviation. And I had no idea where that was going to go. But I did know that, because as a sales guy or in whatever part of the industry you are, you can identify who you think is someone that could work in what you're doing. Because look, you want to hire or grab some of the right people at the right time. And you weren't available at any of those times later. But as it turned out, Shannon became a customer of CNC. And, Keith Haney was the one who kind of dealt with his account. When it came up that Shannon's retiring and then Keith was going to retire, I'm like, well, we've got to look at Shannon. I mean, because I felt very strongly that he would be a successful part of the team. And this show marks 2 years since he started. There aren't that many people in this industry that can do this. And I will tell you, to step out of a government job and then step right into whether it's a training job or a sales job, QA, everyone at this table has stepped into a different position at the company. And I worked for a Boston Airbus, and he said, you got to have the right people on the bus, and everybody's got to be in the right seat. And this group right here is the right people sitting in the right seat.
We're in HAI, and the release will come before AppsCon. It's timely because the networking is a big part of that, right? Going to these shows is important for your career now because you're developing relationships that can help benefit yourself in your current career and what you're doing now, but it's also going to increase your network and help you down the road. Whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or longer, you don't know. But if you don't take the time to go to these things and network and create those relationships, they won't exist, right? And I think relationships are one of the most important things. And Eric touched on it, whether it's today's environment, dealing with city administration, or tomorrow's ability to go out and get a job with somebody. If you haven't developed and networked a relationship to help you in those positions, then you've done yourself a disservice, in my opinion.
I look back on my career in 29 years, and I had 30 years of eligibility. I left the drop program. A lot of folks don't know what that is. It's deferred retirement option plan. You enter in a drop, you keep working, you keep getting paid, and your retirement checks start coming to you. I was always an advocate in always being critical of those who entered the drop and got to the end of their drop period and said, now what? You're supposed to be working on these things early. That's the one benefit that drop gave folks, at least in my mind, what was important to prepare yourself for the next world. And the biggest thing to me was to always get outside of your comfort zone. And I think a lot of folks will tell you that, whether it be through coaching or otherwise in professional development, you have to step outside of that. So I stepped outside in the course of my career, outside of my comfort zone. I led the Troopers Association. I took on State Law Enforcement Bargaining Council, which was self-insured, so it had 1,500 lives in a health and dental plan. I was the lead fiduciary. And then you come into acquisition and you come into development of a law enforcement aviation group, which is huge, as we've talked about for ongoing now. And so to try to educate folks and to try to tell people, the importance of this and leadership, it's equally as important. And I think one of your staffers on break, I had a conversation about, the impact of this podcast on who it's touching. Is it touching current administrators? And I hope it touches future leaders, and I hope it touches young officers as well, just the same. Everybody knows that the weakest link in anything, especially if it's technology-based, in law enforcement and execution-based, is going to be the human every single time. Operations of aircraft, the weakest link is a human being. And so I've had a difficult time over the course of my years to understand, when people don't prepare themselves. It's one of those things that does happen, and I can only recommend that when you're serving in this capacity, whether it's on the street, whether it be in K-9 investigations, whatever the case may be, always get outside of that zone and always make yourself the person that people go to and the people that respect. When I left law enforcement, I briefly stepped into EMS as a pilot for emergency management or emergency medical. I knew it wasn't me at the time. It took a little bit to get there, but I just knew it wasn't me. And so I knew I had other endeavors that I had to come into. And so those relationships continued in discussion with Ed and in CNC. It seemed like a fit to me when Alex called me and had discussions about this is what we're thinking. I was honored because, I always felt I'll go back and look at it. My wife's standing right next to me and she says, you're the guy who's always, made sure you step forward. And you're the guy who always made sure that you just don't, complacency or the norm is not is good enough. You have to be that person stepping forward. So it's really the simplest thing is you have to be determined
Yeah.
And you got to think about these things when you're at a 5-year officer, a 10-year officer, because you could get hurt. Something could come up unforeseen that you could have a job transfer. Your spouse could take a transfer. You have to leave a department, go to another totally different part of the country. And I've seen that. And so people become vested in what they're doing, and that vestment sometimes hurts to their advantage of their progress where they should be in life.
Yeah.
Because they count themselves out. So it's nothing overwhelming in all of my response. It's just, you got to be strong and outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with that. We all make decisions, and it's easy to stay in the position you're in currently because it's comfortable. Everybody likes comfort, right? But I think anybody in aviation, we like to beat ourselves because we're always pushing ourselves to a position that we're uncomfortable with. And that's how folks get to where we've all gotten. You leave patrol, field investigations, which we're all really comfortable doing. You go to aviation, you're now TFO, and that position is arguably the most difficult position in law enforcement. And you've got to be able to accept the failures that go with that. It's hard. It's a hard position to learn. And then now you've kind of gotten that under your belt. Now it's time to go get your butt kicked as a pilot and try and figure out how to hover and these different things. So I think what you're describing is something that is almost inherent in a lot of us, whether we realize it or not. We're all really good about getting ourselves out of our comfort zone, but that's got to extend beyond our current career. It's got to extend to how we perceive the future and the things we prepare ourselves for and the life after retirement.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Again, going back to public safety, we're all generally pretty young when we retire from public safety. A lot of information and value to give back to our community.
So with me, I actually knew when I was retiring. I had the drop like Brian did, the deferred retirement option, and I knew that on March 1st, 2016, I was essentially retiring. I could work for 3 years or up to 6 years contractually. I had a second marriage and a younger daughter, so I knew I was working for a while. It wasn't a secret to me, and I wanted to have a bona fide paycheck. The day I retired, the day essentially I was retiring, I was at HAI in Heli Expo in Louisville, Kentucky. So I was talking to Ed Van Winkle. When I would go to training at Bell, I'd see Ed Van Winkle. I'd stop and see Tonka Hufford from Aerodynamics for the night vision company. Just keep in contact with the people that I knew best in the industry. But I knew I was retiring in 6 years, 3 to 6 years. In preparing for that, my wife and I went shopping. She's like, what are you shopping for? I said, well, I need to get me a jacket and a tie. I've got to look. She's, well, why? I said, because I want to look like Ed. You know Ed.
He's a sexy man, I'll say that.
Well, it's marketing. I mean, I've got to produce myself. So I had to look like I was talking, like they were talking to themselves. So I had to present myself as if I was one of them. I couldn't be that person that was waiting in line to get a free drink or to get a free dinner somewhere. I had to be that guy that was going to be putting myself out there and doing the same thing. And I told my wife and I told my coworkers at my unit, look, this is going to be a challenge for me. It's, there's 5 or 6 positions that come available every 5 or 6 years that you really want to work at. And you're either asked to work there or you're trying to find that job. And I don't want to try and find that job. And so I talked to Keith Haney. I had conversations with Alex about a year before. I talked to Ed, and then December of 21 rolls around. I was retiring March 1st of 22. December of 21 rolls around, and I don't hear anything. I could go fly somewhere, and I would have done great at it, but the 3 C's, cardiac, cancer, or car accident can put you out of a job. And I've got a daughter I've got to pay for college. She's in her 3rd year now at Embry-Riddle University for human factors psychology. So it's not an inexpensive school. So I had to think about what was my plan going to be. So then January rolls around, and my wife's like, have you heard anything from anybody? She said, well, who would you really want to work for? I said, well, I've talked to, a friend of mine, Carl Crenshaw at Bell. I've talked to, Alex at CNC. I said, really? CNC, wherever they go, they're working with flight crews. When we go work with somebody, we're working with flight crews everywhere we go. So it's kind of an extension of what I'm currently doing. And I looked at my phone one day. I'm like, shit. Alex left me a message a week ago. And I didn't respond back to him. I called him and said, hey, Alex, how are you? I'm fine. He goes, hey, I was called off your job. Do you still want it? I'm like, I do. I apologize if I'm a week late, but I do want the job. So it was, for me, a great position to be in. I had been friends with Ed for many years. I had talked to Keith Haney for many years. So I did actually know when I was retiring. I knew that I was at the end of my rope because I did 30 years and then 5.5 years of the drop. So I was really at that moment where I was looking to retire, move out, and had marketed myself to see where I was. The flip side of that was I told my wife, this is a challenge for me. I don't know this end of the business. I know how to present myself. I know the equipment that I started with, the equipment I ended with. I know how to work with CNC, but it's going to be a challenge. And I want that challenge. I don't want something that's going to be easy for me. So I remember leaving a small show we had in Southern California, and I called her up on the phone. And I said, look, this is kicking my ass. These East Coast or these West Coast police aviators are different than East Coast guys. I just don't know that I'm getting it. And as I said that, I realized this is what I asked for. I asked for this challenge. I wanted the challenge. I wanted to really put myself out there to see if I could make it. I said, I'm just going to shut my effing mouth and move on because I asked for this challenge. I wanted something new. I wanted something dynamic. So I shut my mouth and I moved forward. And I hope that I'm representing you all well. I hope I'm doing the same thing. But these guys are great to work with. Alex and the folks at CNC have been a great company to be a part of.
Yeah. You bring up something I think is kind of funny. You think about your 30-year career, however long your career was. You spend that amount of time wearing the same thing to work every single day. The decision of what you're going to wear every day to work doesn't exist, right?
I've not had an interview, right? I did promotional interviews, but I've not had an interview.
Yeah.
I've not interviewed for a job in many years.
Yeah. So to go from wearing a flight suit or a patrol uniform or whatever the uniform you're wearing every day is to now a coat and a tie and looking like a businessman is a challenge for a lot of us, right? We're just not used to it, So I think for me personally, that's also been a challenge, right? I'm used to wearing a board shorts and a t-shirt, that's like that's my formal clothes. And now, outside of law enforcement, now you're looked to wear more business type attire. So anyways, my take on that situation. For yourself, you found yourself with CHP and looking to retire and do something different. A lot of people are leaving California, which is a big difference for a lot of people. And that's, I guess, a different topic for a different conversation. But for you, what did you find that was successful for you?
I think I'm probably the anomaly at the table because I did not have a plan. With CHP, 20 years, 50 years old, you can leave. And so that's the option. They kick you out when you're 60, so you can only work till you're 60. July 12th, I believe, down in Southern California, we were doing a preliminary design review on a 208 Caravan that the Highway Patrol was purchasing. I was there as the chief TFO, designing the work console on the aircraft. We went out to dinner. Then the next day we went through our preliminary design review, saying goodbyes to everybody. And I don't know what possessed me. I was talking with Alex and Ron and just said, hey, if you're ever thinking that you might need somebody, keep me in mind. It was like a set in a volleyball game. Just set it up and then somebody's got to come in and spike that ball. I didn't know what it was going to do. And then the turmoil it caused, because they were so excited to bring me on into a brand new position. There was no program manager before I came on. So I had to develop the role. And so the responsibilities and the just understanding what my role was going to be, the newness of it, the challenges of it just brought on so many thoughts and emotions. And 20 years of security, I told myself when I walked across the stage at the academy and got my badge, 25 years and I'm out. So I knew that was the plan, but now the plan had changed. And I didn't know. I didn't know what the future was going to hold. It's like jumping off into the deep end. I can remember as a kid, I took swimming lessons all the way up through lifeguard. And my first jump off the 3-foot little springboard, I jumped and I landed, the lifeguard's down in the pool with the ring. And she's saying, come on, jump, jump. And I jumped and I aimed for her. I landed right on top of her. My chin came up. I cut my lip. I just knew that I was going to survive if I hit her. And so I did. And so that was what I did here was conversations at home, my spouse, my husband, I'm like, I've got to either shit or get off the pot. I've got to make a decision here, whether I'm going to move forward or whether I'm going to just stay with what I know is in the comfort zone. And I did. I just felt comfortable. Lots of texts going back and forth with Ron and Alex. No, I'm not coming. Yes, I'm coming. No, Reno, ABSA. I'm like, they were like, who is this guy? What are we doing with him? I'm glad I did it. Everything has fallen into place. And I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I think the key factor for me looking back is, do I regret leaving? And I can honestly say that I don't. I feel like I've left my stamp on the department or with the aviation. Like if you were to go to anybody in aviation right now and ask who's Larry O'Brien, they'd be able to tell you. But I don't feel like there's anything else I could have done that somebody else behind me can't do better. So it was time for me to move on. And so it happened, and I'm grateful, and I couldn't be more blessed.
Yeah, it's an awesome story. The fact that you wound up with a company like CNC without having a plan is amazing. Yeah. If you were to look backwards and say, I would plan this differently, would you do something different, or would you have gone with the plan that you kind of set out with?
I don't know. I think just as been said before, as law enforcement, we like the comfort of our job, but we, like every traffic stop is different. Every connection you make with the public is different. So it was a struggle. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to lie. There was ping pong going on in my brain back and forth, whether or not it was a good decision, bad decision. It was like, he loves me not, just.
We love you.
But it was literally a struggle because you're leaving the comfort of something. And because I had no plan, I think may have been that deciding factor, because I had the opportunity. I'm 50. I got 20 years. What do? Do I stay or do I do something different? And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to do something different, and still being involved in aviation, still being involved with law enforcement personnel is just, you couldn't ask for a better fit.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about pushing yourselves outside your comfort zone and trying something that's different. We're good at doing that, and you did that. So I give you a lot of credit for recognizing the fact that you'd done your job. You felt like you set your unit up in a position where the next person in line is able to step in and make the program better. You've done your job. Now it's time to challenge yourself in a new way. Absolutely. So that's a really cool, look at your career. And again, it goes to, we're good at punishing ourselves, right? You think, that scary time where you're really questioning your decision to do what you did. I think back to our first couple weeks or months being a TFO. I think we all still outside of the aircraft at one point were like, what am I doing wrong? How come I can't do this? Did I make the wrong decision? And I think that with any decision you make, if it's a good decision, you're probably going to ponder that, right? Did I make the right decision?
I can remember going back and forth with Alex, like, well, when can you start? Well, let me talk to my admin people and see what the numbers look like and all that kind of stuff. And, well, we need you now. When can you start? And it was just this struggle of, I had no plan, but I was in a position to make a plan, and it worked out.
Yeah.
And it was
one thing that you said you didn't have a plan, but one thing I'll tell you that just about everybody at this table has in common that they may not realize, but if there's one thing you can do to get a position in the airborne law enforcement industry after working in it, is to get yourself involved in an aircraft acquisition. As a sales guy, I was involved in working with Ontario PD on buying an aircraft, working with Massachusetts State Police on the RFP that Mark wrote for a 135, working with Nebraska State Patrol on their 505 acquisition. You were directly involved in the delivery checklist for the A-stars that CHP took. Shannon was involved in the acquisition of both a Bell 407 plus downlink capability. And when you involve yourself in those projects, that's when you get to know the people from the various companies. So if there's a single thing that someone can do to really get involved and get their name out and get if you want to call it a qualification, it won't go on any resume that makes any sense except to people who work in that side of the industry. Because when you have gone out and bought something, then now you've done it just on the customer side. And one thing that Keith Haney used to like to say is, we're not just sales guys, but we were customers at one time too.
Mm-hmm.
We've bought imagers, we've bought aircraft, we've bought, these services, training services, whatever. And so being able to say that when you talk to customers, they realize that you get it.
Yeah.
And several of these folks have bought stuff from CNC as a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can't just speak to the industry in general, but they can speak to their experience, positive or maybe sometimes negative. I mean, there's always the good, bad, and the ugly. And you can speak to it and say, look, this is what I did in your position. And it really helps you connect with customers when you're in this type of job.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, I'm not a supervisor. I'm not a chief pilot. How do I get into that position? And I think that's a very labor intensive job, aircraft acquisitions. I'm sure if you go to your chief pilot or supervisor and say, hey, I'd like to get some experience doing this, they're not going to tell you no. They're not going to kick help away. So again, it comes back to what we're talking about, making yourself uncomfortable, doing something you're not used to doing for the benefit of your career and your development. So I love that. Whether it's that or anything else, you should put yourself in a position to ask for more.
I mean, even if you're a new TFO and they send you to a trade show and you're the one who goes and talks to TRACA and Westcam and Shotover and FLIR and you're the camera expert, well, then they can involve you in that piece of the acquisition. You don't have to be the person managing it, but if you're involved in it, now you're engaged and you understand what's happening.
Goes back to leadership, right? Empowering your people to become better. And I hate to throw you under the bus again, but Eric is really good about delegating, and it comes down to delegating, allowing your folks to make mistakes. If you say, hey, here's his project, go make this challenge coin. Your job now is to go make this challenge coin. It's something you've never done. You learn things through that process, So yeah, as a supervisor, I really encourage you guys to take the opportunity to give folks assignments they're not normal, not used to, outside of their wheelhouse. The development that comes from that, I think, is huge. So I love that. Eric, I've talked about you about 10,000 times. What's your kind of take on this?
About halfway through my career, I went through this epiphany where I realized that I was becoming overly cynical based on the job I was doing and what I was being exposed to. And I didn't like it. So I thought, just going to pull a paradigm shift, and I'm going to be open to whatever comes my way. I was always a fairly motivated person to achieve and or excel at whatever I was doing. What I found was when I would open up to things would just happen. So my career started progressing and I started promoting, and I ended up toward the end of my career with an opportunity to do some aircraft management prior to CNC. And that really kind of gave me the exposure to the private sector that I didn't have. And it was a little bit of a culture shock because it's a completely different dynamic. Talk about going outside your comfort zone. That's an excellent description, because that's what it is. You get very comfortable in what you do, and you have to be able to go outside that, be open to opportunities. CNC was the direction that I was heading, and it was 180 degrees from where CNC was. 8 years ago, we started this company, and here we are now. It's amazing. It's amazing to sit here and look at this panel and the experience that we've been able to enjoy and recruit as a result of the success of the business. So I had a suggestion for anybody. It would just be do the best job you can do and be open to opportunities. So many times what's going to end up being your reality could never envision.
Yeah, 100%. Goes back to what we're talking about, not knowing when something's going to happen and what that thing's going to be. You think you're going to go one direction and it's entirely different. If you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting here with the panel of CNC folks hosting a podcast, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am, and here we all are, right? We're all doing this, and it's really cool. But I think it comes seizing the opportunity to take advantage of the things that have been given to us, the opportunities we have to make yourself better, make yourself uncomfortable, say yes and not no. It's easy to say no, right? Because nobody wants uncomfort or discomfort in their life, especially in a government job. When you go to civilian life, it's a much different category or game. It's been really awesome talking to you guys. This is a great panel, bringing this level of professionalism to the table to talk about these different topics. And awesome. So thank you guys for that. Thank you for sharing your backgrounds and your experience to benefit the overall community. That's again what I love about our community is I feel like we're all helping each other out, and this is a continuation of that. helping folks develop themselves as leaders, and then again later for their careers in retirement. For AppsCon, I know we're looking ahead. Any previews for things to come when it comes to AppsCon?
The awkward stare.
It is.
Is there coffee available?
Yes.
Always coffee available.
Definitely coffee.
There will
Okay.
be coffee, and it'll probably be the first time we have an aircraft on our booth.
Okay. Oh, really?
We'll have an aircraft on our booth. It'll be an exciting show.
Okay.
And maybe a mixologist.
We may have
Maybe some helium bubbles.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much for joining the Hangar Z podcast and for everything you guys are doing for the industry. It's been great talking to you guys.
Thank you, John.
A bunch.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.
For those operators, fly safe.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned air medical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completions Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs, including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors. Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
Thank you to our sponsors who make these conversations possible. To close out these episodes, we wanted to do something a little different. We included some blooper outtakes from the in-person recording with the CNC team at the famous Lumar restaurant in Beverly Hills. Enjoy. Will you turn your mic a little bit?
There we go.
Start again.
That's how you do that. I always wondered.
I got a 4-year degree in that class. Speaking of technology,
I knew you for a long time.
Don't threaten me.
You were my customer. You were my customer.
Yeah.
Is that his way of saying he's senior to us?
Way senior.
What's our time right now?
we're at 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Holy cow.
Cow. You guys need to shut up.
So, you're drunk, aren't you?
No. So that's what's on the ceiling.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.